Welcome to the Spring Into Data podcast series by SAP. This podcast series is a follow-up to our analytics series of last year. We are not letting grass grow under our data. Our new 2021 spring collection of podcasts will take an even deeper look at analytics topics like master data governance, data-driven strategies, content management, and more.
Hi everyone, welcome to our Spring Into Data with SAP session today. My name is Greg Stzelczyk and I'm a Senior Director in SAP's Center of Excellence covering our regulated industries practice. I'm delighted to be today's host for our session and take you through this journey. I'm delighted to introduce one of my colleagues here, Brad Caldwell, who will be joining me along today with this discussion. So Brad, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Brad Caldwell. I'm a Solution Advisor for the Business Technology Platform, really focusing over the last several years on the extension and integration suites, but also our intelligent technologies, and really how they play together within the platform to enable our customers to journey to the cloud and really advance their processes. I've been specifically helping utilities, regulated industry customers in some of these areas, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Brad, and welcome everyone to our fourth installment of the Business Technology Platform series. We've got a great session today featuring our Intelligent Technologies platform. Last time we discussed our integration tools, but today we really want you thinking about innovation. You know, and when you think about IoT, robotic processes, and artificial intelligence, you may think it's too complicated or that it's too futuristic, but our discussion today will help you realize that your future plans may really be at your fingertips. We'll help you understand that being able to utilize the full business technology platform isn't as difficult as it seems, backed up by some real-life examples. So with that said, let's get started. Brad, take it away.
Thank you. So what I wanted to do first was really start at the top. We look at SAP across all the different business processes and applications and areas that it touches. While there's so much breadth of technologies there and solutions to address what we're doing within our industries, our lines of business, and all across the business, we really need to also think about, how are we connecting and utilizing all of these services together, and where can we add additional features or maybe additional value to those processes in which we're using every single day in our business. And that's really where the underlying business technology platform comes in, as it's that real essential glue that we need to connect everything together, make sure we're using all of our data efficiently and using the right data within our applications. Also looking at it from the highest level we can with analytics and really understanding what's happening down at the bottom line all the way to the top line with our processes. But if we look at, the ability now to think about, where are our bottlenecks? Where are the gaps in functionality and things that our customers and your internal customers and employees are both asking for but also expecting nowadays? We have a whole suite of areas that we call the Intelligence Suite and the Application Extension Suite. And these are those two areas that give us those integration services to pull everything together, so that we can really cross the paths and cross the lines of these focus areas that we really need to address within the business. But then also from the extension side, without any disruption to the core, to those core process areas and what we're touching and doing every day within our systems, the ability to add some additional functionality that we otherwise can't in a most likely non-customizable SaaS or software as a service solution. That's where that extension suite comes in to provide those capabilities in the development side. But now let's think about, how can we make all of that smarter on top of that? And that's where Intelligent Technologies comes in, and it's really essentially the armor. If you're a Tony Stark or Marvel fan and an Iron Man fan, Tony Stark uses that armor in the movie to augment his abilities that he can't do as a person. But if you look at Tony as the processes in your business and the armor that Tony uses in Iron Man, those are those intelligent technologies, and those are allowing him to augment all the different areas within him being a superhero that he needs. And that's what our customers are doing with their business today, using things like conversational AI to provide an interactive chat experience for end users and internal customers. Using machine learning to just across the board embed intelligence into these processes so that we have so much more automation and so much more capabilities to cross data and cross functions to have everything harmonious and really give us a lot more efficiency. Then you look at the ability to go in and automate and create these abilities to really take a process and have a bot, have a little digital assistant, if you will, take over and do all the legwork for us behind the scenes, so we can save so many more manual hours in a day and allow us to refocus that time we're saving with our employees specifically to more focused areas and more areas of importance. And we also need to find out what those areas are, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But it's really these technologies that are the focus glue. And if we, our customers today, are starting to look at, how we can incorporate more and more of these into what we're doing. And if you think about it, and you don't want to start with just picking, randomizing and picking one of these intelligent technologies, saying, hey, look, we're getting smarter. We have a chatbot now. Picking something to address a specific need, while you're going to address and probably put together a project, and we'll talk about several of those today, it's ultimately not going to answer the goal and answer the bell to what you're ultimately being asked to do, and that's become an intelligent enterprise and really making everything so much smarter down the road so that everything is learning from itself, everything is built within, and that's where it's important to consider these technologies in the rest of everything else that you're doing as a customer. And that's what we're being asked for, that's what your customers are being asked for, and that's how we grow overall and become intelligent. So one other thing I wanted to bring up is how we can then take items and take areas of our business that we do interact with, might be sensors, might be mobile devices, and also consider that as these touch points for these technologies that get utilized in, as it's really going to be the framework for how we are enabling our workforce and enabling and helping our customers interact with our solutions across the board as they begin to further use these intelligent technologies for the automation and everything that they're going to do. So now is a time in history where we're seeing a huge demand in the changing of the expectations for our end users and our internal employees as they are interacting and working with our systems. So people today are going to websites and they're using all kinds of different tools today, going to their favorite retail shops and engaging with them in new ways that we weren't doing as little as 3, 4, 5 years ago. So it's almost an expectation now when I would need help with something, and if I'm an end user or consumer, maybe I'm just trying to get information about paying my bill for my utility bill for the month. Well, if I have questions regarding that, I'm so used to seeing chatbots or so used to seeing FAQ sections or areas like that on other applications I'm using, that when I'm not providing that for my customer, it really has a negative outlook overall. So you're almost seen as if you're not up to date. It's not a great customer experience because at the end of the day, you are falling short in providing that service to your end goal customers, who are really the ones that are utilizing the service and evaluating your ability to provide what they need on a day-to-day basis. Gartner took a look at this holistically and said, okay, well, there has to be some real deeper, like, fundamental reasonings behind this. So they went to aggregate a little bit of the numbers in terms of where these expectations have really shifted over the last couple of years. And they came back with and showed that by 2022, next year essentially, 70% of customer interactions will evolve in emerging technology. A lot of those intelligent technologies I mentioned before, such as machine learning and chatbots and RPA processes, and all of these experiences are going to touch these areas. And that is up a total of 15% from as little as 4 years ago. So if that trend continues and we're not at least meeting these current expectations, then you're already falling behind. And our customers today not only want to stay up to date with those expectations, but stay ahead of the curve. And that's where, within the SAP Intelligent Technology Stack, and the ability to have everything available to our customers within the business technology platform as one service that I can interact with and utilize in the business, we can stay even further ahead of these trends and really continue to be the ones to invent these interactions combining the technologies, being the ones that are using them as they grow, and so that when a customer does come to your site to use these services, they're now working with the latest and greatest pieces of technology now that's really giving them the best experience possible, because you want them to be happy, you want them to be satisfied, and you need your internal employees to be reaching those internal processes and data that they need to get their jobs done. And these technologies are allowing them as well. So it's not always just about external customers interacting at a front-facing level, but internally, can we improve these processes? And we're looking at it being more and more involved today, so that's where we need to catch up and really continue helping our customers achieve this goal. So with that, I'll just pause for 1 minute. Are there any questions in the chat, Greg?
Yeah, Brad, there is. But first, I have to say that, that was pretty powerful. By next year, the Gartner reference, and it just kind of alludes back to, what I originally said. And, it's really thinking about the future and how SAP's business technology platform can take you to that future, right? So, when customers are thinking about it, they're really thinking about 2025, 2030. But the time is now. It truly is, and they've got to be on the cusp of the future, or they'll get left behind. So, that was really powerful stuff. But the first question that I have, and this is the only one for right now, is what use cases are you hearing from customers that are looking to use these technologies?
Thank you. So there are so many use cases right now, and I mentioned before I've been specifically working with utility customers over the last 5 years, and I've seen the plethora of use cases grow. There was a lot of focus within the industry areas themselves. So if it was a little more specific in utilities, to maybe kind of call center automation. So a lot of people, I'm just focusing on chatbots here for a second, but when they're looking at as an enterprise where they can use chatbots, the general beginning focus seems to shift towards that FAQ style front-facing interaction that you provide to the customer, maybe on your on the corporate page or your retail page, where maybe like within utilities, customers are going to pay their utility bills and those interactions. As that is really, like I mentioned before, that an expectation that they're looking for. But I'd say those use cases that I've been involved with, at least over the past couple of years, have just grown tenfold into lines of businesses such as HR and procurement and supply chain. So, today we have customers, and in fact, this was a conversation I just had recently with a large utility company in the East. They were looking to put an interface, really a UI, if you will, in front of creating job requisitions in their HR system. So that's a little unique. Now what they were looking for is taking a chatbot, kicking off with a chat interface, a series of questions that were automatically responding back and forth to the user, and creating job requisitions that way. If you think about, we've all filled out a job application before, or maybe some of us have even have seen what it takes to create a job requisition where you have like 50 to 60 different categories and asking for all these details. Well, all that stuff has to get filled in, and it takes a lot of work to build those out. But if you can build it out in an intuitive experience where step by step, a bot in this case with this customer would be asking them, what can we point this to from other job references to also use the data in, but also kind of line by line in almost a wizard style to complete these job recs. But then what they can do is, using a more engaging user experience rather than, in a back-end system creating these job recs, they can take the information that they're already putting into the system through the chatbot and then allow other technologies, in this case they wanted to use robotic processing automation, to then automatically go and submit and move those job requisitions into the categories in which they were filling them in at, and then automatically retrieving those requisition IDs moving it back to their the back-end system and saving them in other systems that they needed to also reference that ID in. So it's a complete 360 process. There's just one use case I was talking about off the bat. But, you know, in general, these use cases within these lines of businesses and industries are just growing at a really large scale, because it's not just about, you know, in a chatbot perspective, you know, putting that FAQ style question and answer on the front, but really how we can engage with it in a business level now, and think about the complete experience in which we interact with data and these processes.
That was a great answer, Brad. Thank you.
Sure. So one thing I wanted to look at now is, because we've talked about at a high level where the intelligent technologies fit into the bigger SAP picture, where they fit in terms of the business technology platform. Now we offer that under one umbrella. But we haven't necessarily talked that much yet about how all of these technologies playing together can really create some unique scenarios. Because we look at these individually, and we can kind of, you know, begin to start creating a whole bunch of different use cases for each individual one. Like, I want to do a chatbot, you know, what's an area I want to do some automation in for an RPA process. But what happens is, and I've had some conversations with customers recently. You know, after we go through with those initial use cases, we build, and we you know, automate a specific area, or we build a specific chatbot to address an issue. What happens is we kind of naturally begin to start thinking about, like, okay, well, how can we make this even smarter now? Or where else now can I connect this, what I just built, to another process? And these things begin to grow. They take on their own life of their own. So this is really taking a look at holistically how some of this can really come together, and what some of those examples can be. Because I kind of mentioned before, you know, the SAP Conversational AI, that's the, you know, core chatbot service, can really be a front end to a lot of these technologies here. And then if you're starting on keeping on the outside here, you then can use intelligent robotic processing automation to really do the little grunt work and leg work behind the scenes, so that if I create an interaction in a chatbot, let's say that I want to check the status of an invoice. So I ask the chatbot, and I say, you know, can I check the status of invoice number 1234? There might be processes, or there might be things that you want to initiate after that request gets sent. So you might not necessarily just need, you know, just a simple answer back like, oh, the, you know, status is in progress or status is pending. You might want to also ask a question to something like, can you create a purchase order for me? So while the conversational AI is going to be there to, you know, do the work in terms of interacting with the end user to initiate the creation of a purchase order, now I can have that automatically trigger an RPA bot that's actually going to go in and do that. It's going to create the purchase order for me, and then it can even return me back that purchase order that I was looking for, the number and the details of that. I can have it sent through an email. I can have it update another system that I want. Have that kind of all pulled together. If we take that scenario, and now we want to take something like document extraction. So let's take some more machine learning capabilities now, and now let's take the scenario back a step and say, okay, maybe this was an email that we received from a vendor. The vendor themselves, through an email, is engaging with us. They want to know what's the status of an invoice. It's been over a week. I haven't heard anything. What's going on? So they're sending that in an email. So typically what you'd have to do is you'd have to have, you know, somebody who's monitoring that inbox. They're going to read the email. They're going to grab the vendor's name, information there. Maybe they provided a document number, invoice number, something like that. I have to log into the system. I have to go in and find it, get a status, you know, get back to the vendor. But if we look at it from an intelligent technology perspective and say, okay, well, now what I can do is I can use something like document information extraction. I can have a machine learning algorithm set up so that when that email is received, we're automatically going to start looking at the email for those key objects we're looking for, you know, stuff like an invoice number, customer name, maybe a date, stuff like that we designate, that we train within the system, within the SAP machine learning foundation. And now we can then take that information and push that into an RPA bot that's now going to let us, let the bot go in and do that work with doing the search inside the SAP system maybe, or third-party system, it doesn't matter there, and then find that invoice information, return it back, and then the bot can also even create the email to then reply back to the customer with the status. So now you've taken out having that person waiting there to monitor the inbox and going into the systems, and created a complete loop with these technologies that is going to now save obviously so much amount of time. We think about how many requests you might get a day in some of these areas. We can focus that employee's time onto other tasks that we want to do to augment other processes in the business. So that's just an example that I think kind of helps paint the picture of how these kind of play together. And like I mentioned, as we develop these and our customers develop these new use cases, we're going to very naturally want to evolve them over time. And staying in the middle here again, I use document information extraction as an example, but there are lots of other tools and machine learning capabilities that already exist out of the box. You can get started today. You can bring your own algorithms and your own machine learning data to the foundation and start really building out these more complex scenarios to just further that augmentation, further those efficiencies in the processes. And then you can see, we're beginning to natively embed these within our core SAP solutions. So, going back to our expectations, when you're inside a procurement system like Ariba or doing something within Concur, these expectations are again growing in all of these areas across SAP. Everything is out in the open now. Now we want to look at how these are going to be embedded into our core processes, so that everything's coming together, everything is built within one stack, so that we don't have to worry about the architecture with all the multiple technologies as we're looking at everything from one singular view. And then if we need to, we can create those custom extensions from those core systems that can then use these technologies to really augment more processes. So all of these run on the business technology platform and really play an integrated role in coming together for these advanced use cases that SAP customers are expecting today.
Hey, Brad, just wanted to jump in here real quick. This is great stuff. I do have a question regarding automation. So, when our customers want to look at starting, to do automation, is there some type of foolproof plan, or, what do you really, how do you really go about it? Do you mind answering that real quick?
Sure. So it's a great point, because you have, and we've talked about it a couple of times here, we have these tools available to us through the business technology platform to really look at these processes, connect to them, integration, build extensions. But one of the key questions that I've been getting lately almost daily from customers is like, where do we start? I mentioned in the very beginning that these are tools, in fact. So, having one solution, one service to address one specific need is helpful-ish, but you really want to make sure that you're tackling the key areas in your business that really need the automation most, especially if you're starting from scratch, like you said. We're starting brand new, then we need to understand first, like, where are those biggest bottlenecks? Where are those areas in my processes that can use the automation the most? And then it should be a matter of, okay, now what tools do I have to do the automation itself? And where can it then improve it later on as it begins to grow and move forward? Because a lot of times customers have a specific need. They think they know, they think they have an area where there's a problem, and there probably is an issue there. That's why they're looking at the process, and so they'll attack that first. But that might not actually be the root cause of, or even the biggest area that they should be tackling when they get started. And then it's just one way that could set you back a little bit. It could be one way that can cause issues down the road, instead of stepping back for a second, taking that holistic approach. And that's a process that SAP calls the business process intelligence. And now what we're able to do, where SAP's really evolved this story, is taking the ability to go from the very beginning, where we can start with analyzing our processes and ultimately going in and designing and simulating these processes in motion to highlight those targeted areas of automation. Then when we go into the middle and improve, that's where we introduce our RPA, robotic processing automation, to specifically address those key bottlenecks that we mined in those simulations. So we offer these services now all together under this branch we call business process intelligence, and that gives us a more holistic view now in terms of where we should be looking at. We can compare that to benchmarks. We can use other services. Past the automation phase, we want to then have those capabilities to roll this out across other processes and other areas, and then we need to monitor that over time. So is the efficiencies of the improvements we made, the RPA bots we've put in place now, are they addressing and are they taking care of the issue that we're trying to solve? We can take, you see some of the numbers here, with 300 plus tailored recommendations for S4HANA, RPA, ML. At its core, SAP knows business processes. It's what we've been doing for over 30 years. We have that data. We have the starting points of these recommendations that we can provide when the bottlenecks and areas are found to begin with. And then that allows for those technologies that we're looking at today, the intelligent technologies, to really come in and be a Tony Stark's armor, the Iron Man's armor, if you will, to really improve the scenarios and give us the automation and overall intelligence that we're really craving and looking for in these processes. Hopefully that answers that question. Is there any other questions in the chat right now?
Yeah, actually one did just come up. So it was, or it is, where do you see automation going in the future?
Oh, I love this question because, we have obviously an outlook and a plan now. We've talking to dozens of customers today in terms of looking at this from a business process intelligence level. I already mentioned that we have the tools and capabilities to mine these areas and find those areas of improvement, and then we have RPA to do the automation part. What the future looks like? Well, with the future, we then going to have these capabilities, and SAP is looking at this from a roadmap perspective of now taking idea of, well, when we come up with these scenarios, why not have a bot be automatically created that is already monitoring these processes that we're going in the system, and we're mining and refining them. We're finding in our S4HANA systems or our ERP systems, while we're already doing the analysis of going in and recording all those interactions and seeing where those touch and pain points are. We're going to also be able to, at the same time, automatically create RPA bots that are already looking at what we've done there, install them, deploy them in the business, and then have them run automatically for us to address those areas without us even having to go in manually and put those in behind the scenes. So that's what the future looks like, is end-to-end automation, where you're just starting with the process and all the automation follows behind it without having to manually go in now and even create the bots. So I think that would be really cool. I know our customers are in love with that. We already have some customers lined up that we're talking with today that want to be one of the first ones to jump in there, especially in utilities. If you could think about some of the key areas and like call center and the service ticketing and all these areas that could really use this. But so hopefully that answers your question with the future outlook.
Yeah, no, that was great. I mean, I think again, it's all about future recommendations. So if you can automate business processes, I think it's going to, drastically improve, an ROI or you know, even just an outlook for a company. So that's great, Brad. I really appreciate it. Great answer. Thank you.
So working with customers at this point, we've come up with a lot of different engagements in the RPA and automation space. One use case that really stands out to me, and a customer I got to work with for quite a while actually on building this out, was a utilities customer. They were looking to really improve and augment their call center capabilities. They called this the call center digital assistant. And what they were really looking to do was solve that inherent need when someone would call into the call center and have a question about their utility service in this case. There's naturally a couple of systems that the call rep has to go into to get the right details to answer the person's question. So having multiple applications and even having to go through multiple parameters and asking the whole life story of the customer just to get enough information to find the data they're looking for, they thought about ways of how they can augment that or automate that using RPA bots, so that when the caller would call in and they have a simple ID, something like maybe a reference name or a reference number or something like that, they could use that to, the call rep can use that information to trigger an RPA bot that would automatically run those parameters into those disparate systems. So you might have a couple, even if it's more than two. You're going to save a ton of time by not having to physically have to, while on the call, go in and out of these different applications to get some specific information about that person's service or information about why it's down. Because if you think about in utilities, if they have an outage issue that they're calling to talk to you about, well, that might not necessarily be available to you in your customer reference system. You might have to figure that out in another local area format when they're looking at what's available and what service outages are in the area and stuff like that. So this was a way for them to roll out several RPA bots. And by the way, in less than 2 months, less than 3 months, being fully productive, roll out 80+ bots that was addressing multiple call question areas that they were typically getting on a day-to-day basis. So with all of that alone, in using RPA, in conjunction with the chatbot as a front end on their website, they reduced their first call resolution, so the ability to answer that question the first time they were calling in, to a 95% success rate. So that was automatically, obviously, reducing their overall call center volume, which is a huge KPI for them. And they just had much better customer satisfaction because no one likes calling multiple times. I know I hate it. I hate calling to begin with, but if I have to call, I at least want to take care of the first time. And that's what this customer was able to do by looking at those processes from an automation standpoint and then letting the reps use these technologies to augment what they're doing and really help their customers on the first try. So Uniper is another key customer example that I always go to when I talk to new customers about what they can do with intelligent technologies. And that's because they took it as an approach, or really as a challenge up front, to visualize and understand where they can integrate all the technologies in which we spoke to today: machine learning, RPA, chatbots, IoT in some cases, mobile technologies, and really augment it and merge it into everything that they were doing today from an operational perspective. If you're not familiar with who Uniper is, they're a very large German utilities company focusing on power generation, energy sales, and trading, 11,000 employees. In the center there, middle, you can see a little block of text. That's all the different services, and there's a lot of them, that they were ultimately ended up leveraging from the business technology platform to enable them to achieve those aggressive goals that they were looking for to really fully augment and become an intelligent enterprise. So their CIO had a goal to implement these services within 1 year as a starter use case, and have areas specifically that they found in their analysis, in their processes, where those bottlenecks were, and make sure that automation was automatically embedded and a main conversation in everything that they were doing going forward. So using these technologies together from within the business technology platform, they were able to achieve and get into, I think there was close to like 100 different projects. And a couple of them that we're highlighting here. First one, like I had mentioned before with a job requisition example, that was one of the projects that Uniper had done, using chatbots to create job requisitions, and then using the automation to create these templates. So RPA to create these requisition templates, saving them, processing them much faster, and it led to them achieving a 90% faster data entry for those job requisitions. So all that data we were talking about before, automatically filling that in, allowing the bot to go in field by field, create the, throw in everything that's needed, save it, boom, move it to the right system, and they're ready to go. So they can then move a lot of their HR focus into some of the other areas, and especially recruiting side, to get the talent that they're looking for versus spending so much time on just creating these requisitions. From another operational perspective, they were also using chatbots and RPA down in their field level. So in the operations plants, when they were doing plant inspections, they were looking at incidents that were occurring on site, using mobile applications to capture data on site while they're out in the field. They could some of the use cases were even while they're servicing customers, capturing that data from their mobile devices, and then using RPA to grab the data that they were grabbing. So maybe it was an incident that was occurred on site, something broke, for example, and then using RPA to make sure that that data was moving into the systems that it needed to move to, so that there was, again, a 360 integrated feel to what needed to get processed when that event was occurring on site. So with that alone, and using mobile devices and using RPA, they were getting a 50% time savings on their plant inspections, because they didn't have to constantly go to the back office, record different pieces of data that they needed, put them into the different systems. They can now do that from one device in the field by just capturing, they're capturing photos, capturing manual data in the front end, and then moving that through. So, holistically, with S/4HANA at the core and these intelligent technologies, they saw immediate impact and immediate growth in all these areas. And with the simplification, mind you, of having everything under one roof, under one agreement to access all these services, made it easy from an implementation standpoint. It made it easy from a pricing and purchasing standpoint, because having everything under one agreement in the business technology platform, called a Cloud Platform Enterprise Agreement, they can now access all the services they needed and combine it in all the ways we talked about already today, with just a much more simple pricing model and a simple interaction and implementation model that otherwise would take multiple licenses, multiple agreements from other services. Having everything under one SAP view for them made it much easier for them to tackle these projects that we just showcased here.
Yeah, so Brad, before we wrap up today, I want to say, thank you first, but, there is a question in the chat that I'll get to in a second, but I did have a firsthand experience customer example that I wanted to kind of talk through as well. It was a state located down in the south, and, as we started talking to their CIO, their secretaries, we found out that they have a rising prison population. So what was happening is the state was actually paying the counties I think it was $150 per day per prisoner to house them, because they didn't have enough room in the prison. So what they did was they came to us and said, hey, can you help us solve a rising prison population? Because if not, we're going to have to build a new prison. It's going to cost, X amount for, the rising infrastructure. So what we did was, basically built out this system, through machine learning that took the life of a prisoner, from the start to the finish, and then after, while they were on probation. And what it did was it looked at, what they did while they were in prison. Did they take any vocational training? Did they, any type of useful skills, things like that, and then applied it after the fact. So, the greatest risk for a prisoner to recidivate is, within 3 months. So what we did was built algorithms, using our machine learning, and looked at 3 months, 1 year, and 3 years. And what we found was that, if a prisoner makes it to 3 years, the chances of them recidivating go down to almost like 10%. So it's very minimal. So, what this system does is it makes recommendations, at 3 months and says, okay, for this drug offender, they have to take, drug rehab classes. They have to take this special vocational training, to help them get a job. So maybe they were specialized in, electrician or a plumber or, something else, right? So it would make these suggestions, and it was 5 or 6 suggestions, and then it would move to 6 months. Okay, they've made it to, it would move to a year. And they get to that year, and the recommendations would change because, okay, they're past the 3 months now. They've gone through the recommended, things that it recommended, right? And then it would get to 3 years. So, what we were able to do was help them see, like I said, the life of a prisoner from start to finish. So while they're in prison and then after, so that the probation officers could also, it would help them out because what they had was a series of questions that they would have to ask the prisoners. The prisoners weren't always truthful, right? So, they could say, have you done this in the last, year? They could say, yeah, but also what we did was built an IoT infrastructure. So it would locate the prisoner's house, if they were living in a half house or wherever, and in proximity to schools, proximity to parks, because, it's federal regulation that they can't, if you're a felon, you cannot be in those certain areas. So, they are able to pull up a map and see every offender that is out of prison based off of their address or their halfway house. So, it'll alert it if they are too close, and they will help them, move into an area. So, so those are some of the kind of the possibilities and things that, you can really do with the power of the business technology platform. So I think it's really neat. But I did want to get to this question real quick, and as we kind of go on the same, keeping on the same thing, what are customers using to better enable their workforce or improve safety? So kind of on the same path that I was talking about. Brad, did you want to take that?
Thanks, Greg. And that's a fantastic example. In fact, it's actually one of the first things that popped in my head when you just asked me that follow-up question. Is almost a lot of the same undertones and elements that you just described in your example are in this one that I'm thinking now with Murphy Oil. Murphy Oil, a large oil company, they have safety is their utmost important KPI that they have. It's very important while all their workers on site to be safe. There's a lot of operations that go on site. You can imagine on all these different oil rigs. We're also there capturing, similar to your example, IoT data and sensors from all these different, pieces of equipment that are on site, making sure that we are capturing information in terms of predictive maintenance and, is something about to break? If it is about to break, what are the protocols that go into place? That we got to make sure these systems are all being updated at the same time. Murphy Oil had, in their case, they had over 100 different systems that was, that needed this kind of information at one stage or another to bring it all together. And all those systems at the start of the project anyway were disparate. They didn't really talk to each other. You might have an incident that occurs. You might be having, you might have predictive maintenance data that was getting taken place, but only one or maybe two systems were getting that necessary information to kick off another process. And so what they sought to do first was, okay, take those systems together first, pull everything into one. So that way we have integration across the business area to all these systems, so that when these incidents were occurring, when something occurs out on these well sites, even at an operational level, just figuring out the scheduling, or especially if something were to happen to one of the equipments or one of the workers on site, that information needs to hit the right systems so that those decisions on what to do next can be made right away. So they leveraged the full suite of the business technology platform, including integration services, obviously, to bring everything together, but also create a hub so they had one centralized view into all the data and their well operations on site, but then take chatbots, the IoT data, predictive maintenance, like I mentioned, from the sensors that they're capturing on site, and RPA to bring that data into and push the data and move it into those said applications and systems that they needed, so that when a schedule shift was taking place, they could have that 360 insight into how that affects even somewhere in the back office, so that if something changes on these well operation areas, they have full visibility into how that's going to affect the overall process, so that they can improve that and make those changes ahead of time. On that safety level, as soon as those incidents were occurring, like I said, then the right system, right people are being notified on the spot, even before the equipment is breaking, because we can capture information on using sensors, using machine learning there as well over time to understand when these systems or these pieces of equipment would potentially break, so that we can maximize the safety on site for the plant workers. And then also, from a training perspective, a lot like what you were talking about in assigning these specific courses and learning assignments to some of the people within the prisons, that was also enabled through this overall platform that Murphy Oil was trying to create, in that they could assign learnings through their HR system to also further improve and on-site and work with the equipment, so they're better understanding how these information that they're receiving from these sensors would ultimately cause these breakage, or what they can do on site to maintain them better, and have that information always at their fingertips so they can improve the situations, improve overall safety, and make sure that everything is taken care of in one holistic view, and really bring the business together. So that was a use case that took was kind of similar in some ways to yours, Greg, but also taking the full gauntlet of the business technology platform to pull that together. And that's something that today, even more so, they continue to automate. Like I mentioned, it's not just a matter of using these technologies to put a Band-Aid on something, but continuously capture the information, make it smarter, using these machine learning to really mine what's going on, even at the process level, to create a true intelligent enterprise. And that's what Murphy Oil is really seeking to do through the business technology platform. So that's kind of awesome. The example that I wanted to share. So yeah, go ahead, Greg. Anything else?
No, I think that's just a perfect example, for what we're talking about today, and really the true power of the business technology platform, that, we really want everybody thinking, about now, not about 5 years, not about 10 years down the road. The time is now to really get that message across, right? You don't want to be left behind. And, the really true magic about it is that it's not hard. You've got the technology in front of you, to be able to do this. And, you made me think of another example, and we're almost out of time, but one is Buenos Aires. They've got a flooding problem, and they came to SAP, and we were able to help them with their flood management system across the city. So, they set up IoT sensors you know, in their various parts of the city that flooded, and they're able to divert the water, you know, based off of rising levels. You know, so, you know, things like that, you know, are really cool, and I could sit here and talk about them all day, to be honest with you, because I think it's just great. But, you know, again, it's the time is here now. You know, it's not difficult, and that the power is at your fingertips. I mean, that's really the message. So, you know, as we wrap up, I just wanted to say, you know, Brad, thank you very much for the time today. You know, you've been great. It was a great discussion, and can't thank you enough. So I really appreciate it. Again, thank you for joining our Spring Into Data with SAP session today. Here's to wishing you a spring into your step. Have a fantastic day.